Growing up in Chinatown, there wasn't many activities, so basketball was basically it.
You know, Chinatown was really relatively a ghetto. In the early 40s and 50s, we could not, venture beyond certain streets.
Chinese Center became like the epicenter after a while for many basketball players to, hone their skills and compete with other players in the city locally.
And they play on the Monday night consistently. The best of the best goes up there and play. So if you can play center court and stay on the court, then you're one of the best.
Most people don't know it, but the Saints team was started by a priest at the Chinatown St. Mary's. His name was Father Forrester. He bought the uniforms and then entered the initial group of saints into an Oriental tournament in Seattle, Washington, I think 1947, and won the tournament. In those days, they called it Oriental, not Asian. I think you probably heard of Wu Wu Wong. Wu Wu was, a St. Mary's product, and Percy was on that first team as well.
Wu Wong became famous there. Because he played in the NIT and he went around in New York, Madison Square Garden, and he dazzled them with his movement around the court with the ball, see? And that's how he acquired the name Wu Wu.
After I graduated from Commerce, I started playing with the Saints. We basically played in a lot of the Oriental tournaments, and most of them were sponsored by Japanese. We basically entered all of the San Jose tournament, San Francisco tournament, Berkeley tournaments. Throughout all of that, Percy was the coach. So that's where you sort of have a crossover. He played with the team as a player coach for a while. Then he gave up playing and basically did the coaching. I would consider the group that I played with to be the crossover from the first generation to the second generation.
Oh, to me, the best player in Chinatown was Clifford. Yeah. To me, he was a natural leader, playmaker, okay, and he's what they call a two-way player. Great in defense, great on offense. Yeah, Trout, because he looked like a fish. When he was young, you look at him closely. His brother looked like a fish too. Tuna. We had a guy named, I'm not kidding you, his name, we call him Ahun. Ahun is a big butt.
And throughout most of that time, Percy always talked about, we're going to go on a trip. We're going to go to the Far East. Back then, it was just pie in the sky, okay? A big turning point for us was when we went to the Salt Lake City Oriental Tournament. That was a big one. They had teams coming from back east, Chicago, and so forth.
There was a lot of Japanese intern in Utah. So they had a good community, a large community there, and they had a tournament every year.
So we stayed in people's homes while we were there. They treated us royally. We got into that tournament because of Al Lee, because Al Lee really was a part of the Saints as well. When he went to school, one of his classmates was a Japanese guy bragging about the Salt Lake teams. So Al told him that you should invite the Saints, then you can see some real basketball. They were just buddies, kids needling each other. We ended up winning that tournament 5 years in a row. After the 5th year, Percy saying to me, we're gonna quit coming here because after a while, they treated us like the New York Yankees. You weren't friends anymore. They were always rooting against us. They had a big gathering, sort of like a dance social after the tournament. I had to make up an excuse for why we weren't going to come anymore. Off the cuff said that, well, we're going to be going on a trip during the time the tournament's going on. And I'll be damned if Percy finally got us to go on a trip. We were sponsored by the State Department to go on a Goodwill trip to the Far East in 1956. Because as a result of our winning that tournament for 5 years in a row, we got a pretty good reputation. We went to Japan, Formosa, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur. From Taiwan, we went to Hong Kong, we went to Penang. And you know, for us, it was really a big trip. I remember that's the first time I got out on a plane. It was really a first-class experience. And I think that was the first Saints group that traveled like that.
Maybe at that time, the basketball was not popular in the Southeast Asian countries, and maybe getting popular, so we were there to not teach, more demonstrate the skill of shooting and defending and dribbling. I don't remember other people teaching. I remember I was teaching. Proof of it.
In the old days, in our days, AAU was college players.
Ex-college players.
And we would play against college players and some semi-pro players in those days.
Some of the teams that we played against, like we mentioned, like the French team, the Peru team,
China team.
So a bunch of San Salvador.
You know, Percy was involved with all kind of coaches. The Presidio coach, Hal Fisher, they were real good friends. We would play the all-Army team every year, either here or down at Presidio.
Yeah.
They would come out, or sometimes when he was trying to pick his all-Army team, Norm would be showing some of these guys off, and Hal would say, Randy, punch the guy out and see, I want to see what he does.
You know, even though our competitors, you know, the non-Asian were twice as big as us, but we played against them, we gave them a competitive game, and we never shriveled. We weren't intimidated. But I think he's just one of the representation for the Chinese. I think we played against Paul Silas.
Yeah, we played against Paul Silas, yeah. We played a lot of close games, and they would be impressed. They would be impressed with Norman, how's that?
I came to Chinese Center when it first built. I was about 12 years old when I started coming here, and all of a sudden I'd be opening the gym with Mr. Nelson and close the gym with Mr. Nelson. This is where we hang out.
He was a gym rat.
Yeah.
Norman Jang, when he played on the court, everybody remember his name. So who is that guy? He had a deadly shot. As Stephen A would say, he's like an assassin. He would come up there and he would shoot the lights out.
He was so dynamic. I mean, he would shoot like 3-point shots before they were 3-point shots. You get 2, right? But he's way back there, shoots this weird thing behind his head, and it goes in. And then all of a sudden he'll do this like left-hand hook from like 30 feet, and it'll go in. But you think it's luck, but it keeps on going in.
I believe he was the first Chinese to try out for the Warriors, and he was the last person to be cut. That was in the 60s. As I understood, he was considered.
In our culture in Chinatown, the parents are so busy working, trying to provide for the family. Percy was that guy. He was there to tell us, don't come to the gym unless you have your homeworks done. He was a mentor and a second father to a lot of people in the local area.
You know, he knew that I was majoring in physical education at Berkeley, and he asked me, hey, there's a Pac Asian tournament going on in Seattle. I want you to coach the team. I said, yeah, I'd be happy to coach, but where's the team? And of course, Percy would say, don't worry about the team, I'll get them. And 2 weeks later, he had tryouts.
Now, it would take several hundreds of people to put together what Percy did, because he didn't charge us a penny. He found housing for us. We stayed at people's homes in Seattle, probably from friendships that he had nurtured and networked. We were naive. We just went to play basketball.
You know, they're very generous of them to take teenagers in and to let them stay at their home, but they drove you around.
They fed you.
They fed you. They did everything for you for, what, 3 or 4 days while you were up there?
That Seattle trip was the first time I ever been on a plane, so I was really excited. Really opened my eyes to, you know, what's out there.
What I remember about that tournament is we were high school punks, conceited, and we stayed with this family, the Coles, I believe. His son was a really quiet little kid. He was sitting way up in the top of the stands. 2 minutes to go, we're taking layups. And then Ray goes, I'll be right back. He walked all the way up to the top of the gym. He brought Krevin down to our bench. And then he came back to finish up. And I said, man, he's a big softy, man. He just, here I am. I'm not even thinking much about anything except for basketball. But I was impressed because I said, that's a good guy. He's looking out for people. I think Percy would really love that story. I treasure that because it's beyond the basketball.
Back in 1981, we were lucky enough to get invited to play in the first annual National Chinese, North American National Chinese Tournament that held in Chicago.
It was organized from Boston, Chicago, Philly, New York, and
DC.
So those 5 started this national.
I think they had been playing tournaments amongst each other for a while, but they didn't have any West Coast participants.
Yes.
I think I was surprised by that.
It opened your eyes.
There's enough Chinese basketball players in Chicago to field one team, but wait, they have 3 teams?
First time you see mixed race players, so you start to see other players that, half Chinese, half white, half black, half Japanese.
First year when we went, it was more like pick-up teams, like last minute, like, who wanted to go, who's available. When we first start the game, it's like, hey, we could play with this guy, because we are much quicker. We can outrun them. Like the New York team, they're a little bit older too. So we found out, hey, we're pretty good. And the first year we have to play 5 games in one day. There's no expectation, right? And we won. We end up winning the first 8 out of 9 tournament. That's how I feel that actually we are the one that make the Saints name famous for the national level.
I think we play in the golden age where when we started, basketball was Chinese Americans wanted to play, but where do they play? And because we were successful, they started Saints 2, Saints 3, Saints 4 to basically get more teams playing, because at that time it was only us playing. And we got it more organized just because we were successful.
China would call Percy, and this was a traveling national team from China who have been touring. So we had a tournament, and of course, who are we, right? Our biggest guy's 6'1". Their guys are like 6'8", 6'9". So we played at Chinese Center. It was a big event. The stands were packed with 200 people. We were going to win that game. Going into the last 5 minutes, we were ahead by 4 or 5 points, and I'm going, we can stall this game out. We can spread the court out and just let them follow us. But Percy would say, friendship first, competition second. So we just played a normal game, and the other team caught up and they beat us. So, and that was the last I heard from China for a while. And then a year later, then Percy goes, hey, we got an invitation to go to China.
I believe that's the first team that played the People's Republic of China. We were always outsized throughout the whole lineup.
We had this thing, we're going to do this thing, we're going to walk out in the court for warm-ups, we're in a certain procession, Ted being, the shortest, all the way up to me, the tallest, which is not, a variation of 4 inches.
Right.
And we walk out and people start laughing because we are so small.
In Beijing, we had this guy, Mu, was 7'8", I believe. As Vincent Wong will correct me, not 7'4", he was 7'8".
Who was 7'4", like 400 pounds.
7'6".
7'6", thank you. Just a giant of a man. I mean, the real center was already 6'11". It was not going to be much of a contest because, their center was a foot taller than all of us, at least. But, Sam, Robert, Ted, guards were faster than they were.
We didn't get slaughtered, but then, slaughter can be different interpretation. You lose by 20, that's pretty slaughtering.
We only lost by 50. But again, we scored 70-something points.
It was a great experience because we played in front of 10,000 people and 5,000 people, and we were like little celebrities because we see ourselves on TV. We were VIP, so every night we would have banquets.
It was very enjoyable to sit down with the team you played before you played a tournament. That's where Percy's talked about friendship. We played a Beijing team, and we're eating before them, and they're very cordial and very polite, and they says, go ahead, eat. I was like, wow, this is strange, they're so nice to let us eat all the food. What we didn't know was what was coming next. Peking duck came out, right? That's when the chopsticks went flying.
We didn't do well against most of the teams. I mean, we won one game against the Hong Kong team, barely. But yeah, 1981 was the year of opening for China to open the doors to the West and the rest of the world. And we were one of the pioneers of it. So I felt like Chinese Center was like the epicenter of Asian basketball, Chinese basketball players that wanted to play well. I mean, if you could prove yourself at Chinese Center during Chinese New Year's, then you're probably at the top of the list,
There's a lot of San Francisco Saint players that played on different teams under different sponsors. There was one Saints team that won like 7 years in a row, and that's LA Saints, and every year would be different, and it's bragging rights. You're doing bragging rights. You have Braham on one team, Tim Ong on another team. You have Sam, Ted, Kelly, James, Vince, they're on their team. And then we had other teams like Phil, Stan.
They had, I think at one point they had like a top 30. When you form your team, you can only have 2 of those players on your team, like a salary cap. But then they changed the system to 4, I think, soon after that. So we stayed together as a group for maybe 8 years, 9 years, But that was a big part of what made that tournament unique and what made Chinese Center unique. Every Chinese player, they all wanted to play in the Chinese New Year's tournament at Chinese Center at that time of year and win it and do well. That's where you made your name.
Almost all the teams had coaches. Almost all the teams had uniforms
and sponsors.
And sponsors. H&F Plumbing versus,
Al the optometrist.
After the games, Percy would go into his office and he'd call up someone. Back then you just had the Examiner and the Chronicle, and then he would read probably the high point scorer on each team, the MVP, the All-Stars, and then the box scores.
Percy kept all that stuff.
Yeah.
And in photocopies of all his box scores, articles.
And he would mail it to us. If we were involved, our name was on it, he would mail it to us.
No, randomly, seriously. He was known for doing stuff like that.
Probably that idea of putting things in the newspaper appealed to him, that, the Chinese American basketball is legitimate news too.
He was our PR man and our general manager, basically, and something to be proud of, at least for the community anyway. And as a Chinese American, at least she has something to brag about.
If you see all the games at the old rec center, you have seats and people would sit on the steps. They would sit in the aisleways and everything, and usually right up by that door in the back, he would be always sitting there, watching everyone, watching all the games. So he's always thinking basketball, San Francisco Chinese, how can we make this better?
He would call politicians up. John Burton would write resolutions for the city. Feinstein would write notes, resolutions for him. Al Addos would come, and Alex Hannum would bring the Warrior team to Chinese Center to practice. And I'm going, wow, how does this guy have so much influence over these, very professional and, people of high status, right? It was incredible.
Ray Helm used to call him Columbo. I don't know how he came up with that name. He would sit there and look at him and say, hey, Columbo.
No, I didn't call him Columbo, but I just said it to the players, I say, just the way his demeanor, the way he acted and walked, and his hair, and
his hair was always a little disheveled.
Looked like he just got out of bed.
Yeah, just remind me of Columbo.
And he makes you feel welcome. I hadn't known anybody, and he just, hey, Craig, he starts making you feel at home. If you needed anything, not besides basketball, he'd tell you, oh yeah, you should do this or that. But I always cherish the memories and relationship I had with him.
And he was proud of just our culture and helping this community out. And a lot of it is he's helping the youth pretty much get out of the area, right? As we succeed, we all branched out.
Basketball gave me the moxie. I guess when you're young, you're not afraid of anything. even a little announcement or leading a song, whatever, right? It gives you that kind of confidence that you're not going to melt in front of these eyes looking at you, right? So I think that helped me a lot.
Kept me out of trouble, I would say that. Kept a lot of people out of trouble, and then make them a better citizen, better person in the community too.
It gave you a lot of life skills as you grow. As I grew in my professional life, working for Fortune 500 companies, being a manager, managing teams of people. I mean, it gave you that awareness of what it is to work on a team towards a common goal.
But as you get older, you realize the contributions that Percy made, the introductions, the vision of putting these teams together. The more you find out about this man, you just become more amazed of what a beautiful human being he was. And he had a great family.
Yeah, I think he's Mr. Basketball of Chinatown. Chinatown.
Because everybody knows Percy in Chinatown. He could run for mayor, he might win. That's how popular he is.
Percy was a person who wanted everybody to play basketball, and he would bring kids from all over to play. He would look for talented kids to be on the San Francisco Chinese team. He would want them to come to the center to play. And he just enjoyed basketball. His whole family, his wife did too. And that's why the center is named after him. I mean, he's a legend here. I mean, this is his gym.